In the previous episode, we saw how Quincy is preparing for the war against the Soul Society, and the Quincy King also sent his men to declare war and give a little demonstration of how mighty and powerful they are as well. This episode begins right where we left off, as we saw how the Quincy King cut off Looter's arm for having conflict in his presence, while the man is trying to report the incident to the king. Looter have collapsed onto the ground, and he's bleeding very badly as he tries to get up and speak. Ibrin is also there, and he is both shocked and terrified as he kneels down in front of the king. As Looter tries to get back on his feet, the king goes on to tell him that he can report to him while he's on the ground. He, however, considers it to be very disrespectful to his mighty king, so he keeps trying to get back on his feet. This shows how much they fear or respect their king for that matter. The scene then changes to the town of the humans, where the group of Soul Reapers, Sado, Yuru, Orihime, and of course, the new Soul Reaper named Yuki, sit and talk about Ichigo's fight with a strange creature earlier, which seemed like a human, but it was way more than that. Yuki is worried for Ichigo, and goes on to say that they should go out there and help him, but Yuru tells him that Ichigo can take care of it, as he is too powerful to lose to a challenger like that. Orihime then goes on to point out that she's impressed by how much Yuru knows Ichigo, because they have spent time together in recent years, and Yuru has grown a lot in this time. Ichigo shows up as he enters through his window, and everyone asks him about the fight with Ibrin, and just as he's about to explain the fight, all of them go on to receive the same message on their phones. The center of this message details how a single intruder killed over 100 members of the 1st Division, while 7 more confronted Yamamoto and departed through unknown means. The lieutenant of Great Yamamoto has also been killed during the attack, and Yamamoto mourns his death, as he does the whole Soul Society. When the group goes on to read the message, there is a ray of shock at Ichigo's place. Rather than discussing it right away, the group goes on to separate for a moment and try to process the information they have just gotten. Ichigo decides that he's going to go out to clear his mind, so he makes his way out of the patrolling location. As he moves towards the location, he's smashed to the ground by Nell, who shows up out of nowhere. When Ichigo gathers himself after the attack, he sees that Nell is crying, and she's trying hard to tell him something. On the other hand, Looters goes on to tell this king that it is going to take at least 5 days for the Soul Society, and they prepare for the big war. The king, however, does not seem too impressed, and he goes on to confront him about his previous prediction, where he had told the king that if they continue to eradicate the Hollows, the Soul Society and human world are going to lose their balance, and they're going to collapse big time. He then asks Looter if he's a prophet, to which Looter's reply is of course no, and the king then annoyingly tells him that he just wants to hear about the present, not the future anymore, not past. The king then goes on to wave his hand and kill Looter by blowing his head off. After finishing off Looters, the king goes on to turn his attention to the boy who fought Ichigo at the end of the previous episode. The king goes on to tell him that he was not able to defeat Ichigo, but at the same time he was able to keep him at bay. So he has done his job, and after that the king kills himself as well. When another masked man asks him if it is logical to kill naturally trained soldiers, Yoash claims that he can find some more Arnikar anytime he wants, as he reveals an imprisoned Tier Hadibel before stating that Huikyo Mundo is his territory. By these two revelations, he has basically pointed out the fact that he's really close to invading the Soul Society, and even his own people do not know about it. The scene then changes, and a bewildered Ichigo asks Nell what she means after learning everything that has been going on. Pesce crashes into the ground nearby with the same message. Back in the Soul Society, Byakuga Kuchiki speaks of the deceased lieutenant's unwavering dedication and loyalty to Yamamoto, who mourns as his funeral pyre is lit. All of the captains of the 13 squad are there to attend the funeral of the highly celebrated lieutenant. On the other hand, at his house, Ichigo has right away called a meeting, where we see Orihime, Sado, Yuru, Ichigo are present to discuss the news about Huiko Mundo. Pesce then goes on to explain how Hadibel ruled Huiko Mundo after Baragan Lucian Baden's death before she was struck down by the mysterious Assalians, whom he reveals also took their friend Dondo Chaka, while he adds that him and Nell barely managed to escape when the people close to them were being kidnapped. Both Nell and Pesce then go on to beg Ichigo and the other group members to save their friends, and they of course go on to say yes. When Sado says that they will help, Yuru reveals that he cannot accompany them because he is a Quincy and he cannot help Hollows or Arankars. His only purpose is to destroy them, whether they are good or bad. Ichigo tells him that he understands, adding that he respects whatever Yuru decides. This again reflects the fact that how close they are with each other. As the group decides to leave Yuraha, the former captain of Squad 12 appears with an offer to take them to Hyuko Mundo. The crew then goes on to race towards Hyuko Mundo. The moment they get there, they go on to see a group of soldiers moving a group of captives. The group tries to look for Dondoshaka and realize that their friends is not among the captives. They also go on to notice how these soldiers have just obliterated a whole settlement of Hollows and Onkars. Orihime then takes a quick scan of this place and goes on to say that these soldiers have left no survivors behind, and that puts the spotlight on the fact that this group is as powerful as cruel. Pesce then goes on to point out that the captains of the Arankars are either going to get killed or they're going to get recruited in the army of the enemy. Ichigo then decides that he's not going to let that happen at any cost, adding that he's moving forward to free the captives even if Arankar they came to save is not with them. Yuraha then goes on to point out what all of us must be thinking as well. He says that it is fascinating to see how Ichigo is so eager to save the people who used his enemies not a long time ago. When Ichigo gets ready to fight, the rest of the group also gets on their mask to help Ichigo save the captives. We go on to see that the captives are taken to a high-ranked member of the enemy, and his name is Stern Rider. Stern Rider goes on to say that they are going to have fights between the captives, and the winner of these competitions are going to be allowed to join the army. He goes on to tell them that he's going to start killing the Arankar if they don't follow his commands. They then ask them to growl, and one of the Arankars right away comes forward and tells Ritter that he's willing to join his army. It, however, turns out to be a stupid idea as he goes on to stab him in a brutal manner, adding their willingness to growl only means that they are ready to compete. It does not mean that they're going to be directly recruited in what they call it as a mighty army, being raided for the big war. He then goes on to have some fun with the captives as he starts killing the Arankar randomly just because he feels like it. One of the soldiers then goes on to point out that Ritter does not give a crap about the recruitment of the soldiers. Hyuko Mundo, or for their own mission for that matter. This is all nothing more than a game to this man. As Ritter moves forward to the two remaining Arakar, these two go on to spring into action right away as they come out of their cloaks and swiftly break Ritter's spear and go on to put there on his neck. The two then go on to introduce themselves as Aloy Irene and Melanoi Malia. Just when the two think that they have got Ritter has a very satisfactory expression on his face, and he is not at all impressed by their moves. Ritter just goes on to activate his Quincy locket and takes the two of them without sparing much of an effort. Ritter J, however, says that he is impressed by their bravery and courage, so he tells his soldiers to capture them, as their king has ordered to capture people who have balls. As Francesca Mila Rose and Emilio Paki begin flickering, Saiyan Sung Sun confronts Ritter, and the three begin fighting the Wander Range, which causes Ichigo and Nell to feel their Rietsu while approaching the battle. While Nell explains the Trias Bestias and their strength to Ichigo, the Trias Bestias effortlessly slaughter the Wander Range officers, only stopping when Ritter suddenly kills an officer who requested a withdrawal order. They have slaughtered all the soldiers of Wanderage, but have been unable to land a single hit on Ritter. Ritter then goes on to implore that they surrender so that they can serve Yuach along with their beloved Haribel, but all three unanimously refuse the offer and continue to try and attack him, disappointing him. The scene then changes to the Soul Society. In the 1st Division barracks, Akon concludes his report on the invasion to the captains as Muri confirms that the invading army is comprised of Quincy's. One of the captains moves forward and goes on to say that it is now confirmed that the Wanderage are responsible for the eradication of so many Hollows, as they want to disrupt the system in the world of the living and the Soul Society, because they of course want to put an end to it. He goes on to say that the only people who actually have the power to extract the souls of the Hollow monsters are the Quincy's. No one else has the power to pull it off. Upon being told that they have not yet located the Wanderage base of operation, all the captains then go on to say that they should prepare for the battle immediately. Back in Hyuko Mundo, Ichigo and Nell finally make their way into the battlefield, and both of them are shocked to discover that Ritter has defeated the Trias Bestias as Ritter notes their arrival. Ichigo is shocked. And of course, all of us now wonder whether he happens to have a chance against Ritter, the Quincy who has managed to finish off Rikuo Mundo without even bearing a single scar on his body.